Next regular meeting of the Wetzel County Board of Education is called to order. Mrs. Cooley will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll share an invitation after that. Anyone not wishing to participate may stay seated.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we just ask your continued strength and blessings as we strive to teach and educate the students of Wetzel County. As we begin today with our students in our schools, we know that we're still in very challenged and uncertain times, and we just pray that we can stay safe and healthy throughout this, and that our students will thrive academically, socially. Just pray good things will come from every effort. Be with us as we make decisions that relate to that. Again, we know that these are difficult, challenging circumstances that we're in. Divided times where consensus is hard, but we just pray that you would give us tender hearts and kindness towards one another as we strive to find answers and find paths forward through these challenges. Go with us. Thank you for strengthening us. We pray this through Christ's name. Amen. First item on our agenda is we do have one delegation, Mr. Kendall from Wetzel County Education Association. So you may have your 5 minutes, sir.
I'm sorry.
I said you may have your 5 minutes.
Okay,
You're
thank
good.
you, sir. First of all, I thank the board for this opportunity to discuss this issue a little more. Of course, I'm here to speak about the relationships with outside groups. As co-president of one of the outside groups, I think I would be remiss in my duties if I didn't point out just my concerns. And I know some of you heard those last time. And it's important to note, too, that I'm not referring to current employees of our county, of our board. But after doing this in Wetzel County since 2008, and then with WVEA on their board since 2012, and part of that is working with other counties to assist them, and I have seen some things. So it's just from experience. And when I was writing this afternoon, it sounds like I'm really complaining, but I'm not. I'm just trying to get as positive an outcome on this as I can, because quite honestly, I fully understand the reason for the policy. Much of it, it's needed, and it's something that I know has had some issues in the past, and I can see where it would prevent a lot of issues. My issue, my concern, not really an issue, is Section D, the distribution and posting of literature, and I think I pointed that out earlier. Okay, the first paragraph under that reads that no outside organization or staff member or student representing an outside organization may distribute or post literature to that organization on that organization's behalf on district property. And it goes on, but at the end it says further, without the permission and prior approval of the principal. Again, I'm not referring to any of the principals who are currently working in the county. I think we have a good relationship, working relationship at all levels. But in other places, again, I've seen things. Okay, the concern is that in effect gives some control over what we distribute or what we might say to people who aren't members. And as you know, we have a certain responsibility to our members. I understand the county's position on this as well, but that is a major concern. Other places, it has opened up to policies or actions where they tried to stifle speech or simply just shut down organizations. Because, you know, nature of the beast, sometimes we do, in our role, anger people. And sometimes it's not, to me, it stays business. It's not personal, but it happens. And so my concern is that it might open up to the possibility of retaliation, of using the policy to stifle speech, things like that. and I go on to say that I've seen and dealt with it in other areas. Okay? And again, I'm not referring to any current administrators. I'm just concerned what happens in the future, because the people that are there now might not be there next year or whenever. You never know what the future is going to bring. And the same is true for my role too. My other concern really is number 3. And this is the section that says that all non-school related materials, the manner of distribution, all that's established, and the disclaimer. Because it says neither the Wetzel County Board of Education or any of its agents or employees, and that's the key part, sponsor or endorse this club, group, organization. The views expressed may or may not reflect those of the district, the school administration, are neither approved nor disapproved by them. I don't think anybody would really mistake WCEA and WCS, but you never know. And the thing about the disclaimer, to me, the first thing that jumped off to me is we are employees. All of our members are employees. And we do, in fact, also endorse our organization. So it would be rather dishonest. And the other thing is, I'm in the process right now of distributing around 180 desk calendars. It's not exactly literature, but it is materials. That disclaimer wasn't printed on any of them. And to really deal with that would be like a really huge burden. Some other organizations, it might be logistically prohibitive too. It just, okay, and some of the suggestions I've actually heard is, use electronic methods, and we do that. We have a variety of ways of disseminating information, but some people still prefer that physical copy. They want that physical copy right there where they can see it. And sometimes, quite honestly, that's the most effective. And for that and various other reasons, going completely digital is not feasible. So the only thing I have to say beyond that is I would hope that the board would consider a carve-out for employee organizations, not just the one I represent, but others. I'm not here speaking on their behalf. I can only speak for the people who elected me. Possibly a carve-out for those organizations, or consider the amendment that was briefly discussed last time. And as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. If you were wondering, it was a good first day.
Thanks.
So happy first day to everybody.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda now is superintendent's information. Well,
Okay. I gave a presentation on the second day back for teachers, and I wanted to go over all of it actually with you. I won't go quite as into detail as I did on Tuesday, but I do want to go over it with you.
if I could pause you just for a second. Mr. Lancaster, while you're on your feet, could you turn that TV so Mr. Castle, could you see that one a little easier than that one? Mr. Castle, it would be easier if you turned that one. I think everybody there can see that side one over there. I think everybody's sitting in the audience. Okay. Maybe that'll work a little better. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I started the conversation with the high school teachers in the morning and with the elementary teachers in the afternoon about what Wetzel County Schools meant to the different people, the different stakeholders in our community. And I really talked personally about what Wetzel County Schools had meant to me. And to make a long story short, because I did give lots of examples during that talk, Wetzel County to me is not me getting up in the morning and going and taking my children to the babysitter and coming in and being superintendent. Wetzel County to me is the experiences that I had when I was a student in this system. And that's a testament to the service personnel and to the professional personnel that I encountered during my entire school career. So we started with that. Then we went into our strategic plan goals, which you approved at our last meeting. The first is family engagement and wellness. We know that we want our schools to authentically engage and listen to families so that they are equipped to act as effective partners in their child's education to raise achievement 2.5%. And the second is instructional leadership. We want to increase instructional accountability, and of course we talked at length at the beginning of my tenure as interim superintendent, now superintendent, about the West Virginia Teacher Leadership Framework and the teacher evaluation rubric. And we also, for this, want to help us have 2.5% gains in achievement. We then went into the West Virginia Standards for Effective Schools, and what you guys are going to start seeing is the things that I've talked to you about in board meetings are the things now that are starting to come together, and it's all starting to mesh our strategic plan goals, our standards for effective schools, the teacher leadership framework. It's all starting to mesh, and that's what I wanted our teachers and our service personnel to know, is that these things that we study actually have meaning, they make sense, and it leads to a cohesive year where people are not trying to grasp for what are we doing here, that it's very clear, and it all relates back to what the state expects for us and what we as a local education agency want for ourselves. Clear and focused mission. We've already gone over these board meetings. It's our purpose and approach to support learning for all. Talk about our culture, shared beliefs and values, and I've talked at length about the activity that we've done with different stakeholders that stays on this wall, because we've had different groups coming in and doing that activity on shared beliefs and values, and a commitment to a shared vision. And of course our vision in short, and our mission in short, is educating individuals for success. And that is our motto. The second being instructional leadership. That ensures the effectiveness in instruction that leads to student achievement. Starts with the principal. And they make sure that teachers and they themselves are implementing high-yield instructional strategies. The staff then has to lead and assume responsibility for the overall academic success in the school. And I love this one. Students are engaged in age-appropriate leadership opportunities. Put the onus on the kids. You know, it's their success that and their grade, so to speak. However, we need to give them the structure and the age-appropriate opportunities for them to be able to be successful. Number 3, high expectations for success, providing a climate in which all students can learn and succeed. The staff believes in and demonstrates their ability to successfully teach all students. And this is key when we talk about Hattie and Marzano, and I've mentioned Hattie and Marzano to you guys. And Hattie's #1 strategy for getting the most bang for your buck and the greatest results and achievement comes from the staff's belief that the kids can do it. So this is so important and just an amazing responsibility for our staff in the school system. Responses and adjustments occur to assure mastery when some students do not learn or have already mastered the concept. A positive and safe environment. Orderly, purposeful, and accommodating of all students' needs. We need collaboration and cooperation. Appropriate behavior is expected and supported of staff and students. And student diversity is embraced and respected. Number 5, equitable opportunities to learn and effective instruction. We need to provide sufficient time for meaningful learning. And I'm so excited that we are big proponents, and we have a really good mapping process going on in our county. The high schools are done, and they are now at a point where they go back and revisit and revamp. And the elementaries are almost completed, Mrs. Stanford, am I right? Yes. And the nice thing about the elementaries, they've included the scope and sequence, and that's going to filter up into the high school now as well. So it's just a real good time for us to have this sufficient time for meaningful learning. Instructional time is utilized efficiently and effectively. Instructional activities are rigorous and aligned to student interest and state standards, and feedback is timely and ongoing, and it supports the individual growth of the students. Frequent monitoring of student progress. We know that we don't just use the GSA. We don't just use the SAT. We don't just use the NOCTOP, the ACT, whatever it is. We use a variety of data, iReady, whatever you want to use. We use all of that data, attendance data, graduation data, as a basis for adjusting our instructional approach. We use formative assessments. We use what the students do, their performance, to guide our instructional decisions, and the power is in the teacher. They monitor the student progress toward meeting those established instructional goals. And family and community partnerships. Well, if you look at goal number 2 for the state standards, that's instructional leadership. Well, that happens to be one of our goals. If you look at goal number 7 for the state, family and community partnerships, our other strategic plan goal is family engagement. So we are right in line in Wetzel County with the standards that the state has set forth for us. The school community fosters shared responsibility for student success. The community has to understand what we're doing so that they can support our school mission. And there has to be a partnership between school and community so that we can have the best academics, we can have great social, emotional support, and meet the physical needs of our students. And then, of course, the West Virginia Teacher Leadership Framework. This, of course, fits in to the other 2 parts. We have 5 teams: beginning teachers, experienced classroom teacher leaders, national board certification candidates, aspiring administrators, and the classroom assessment network. I've gone over this with the board, but we will use master teachers within our ranks for the beginning teachers, and we will also have a critical friend from the Southern Regional Education Board to guide the work of the master teachers with our beginning teaching crew. We will have the experienced classroom teacher leaders. I love this group because these are the leaders that don't want to be principals. And I love my principals, I was one myself, but we need leaders who want to stay in the classroom because they will be impacting instruction as well as having that real critical link to the people that are still working in the classroom as well. And they can collectively, as it says up here, influence their colleagues, they can work with principals, they can work with outside school communities, and they can improve teaching and learning practices while they're practicing themselves in the classroom. The third is the National Board Certification Candidates, led by the Wetzel County Schools Nationally Board Certified Teachers. Mrs. Spawner has agreed to help us and serve as a volunteer since she is a board member and can't be paid to do this, and Mrs. Spawner, we truly appreciate that, along with Sedona Kimball and Mary Young. And they'll go through the 4 components of the certification process with our candidates, and they will mentor the candidates in the program as they go along. The aspiring administrators, and I told this story both times, and Paul's probably tired of me telling this story, but Paul sat here the other day in our principals meeting, and I was sitting over in my usual spot, and I was thinking back that Paul and I have really come a long way, and remembering back to, I started in '98 in administration in this county, and Paul started in '99, and we were kids. And Paul's yet younger than me. And as I was watching him lead the principals meeting, because in his position, he leads the principals meeting, I looked over and he has a mug. Now, mind you, we were kids when we started. Mr. Yeager, you remember, we were young. His mug said Grandpa on it. So I thought, this is so perfect because we are getting older in our administrative ranks. And we need to grow our own administrators. We have some wonderful people that have come to us and from out of the county. In fact, even though I graduated from Valley High School many years ago, I worked outside of this county at first in Mon County and the Baltimore City Public Schools. So I was kind of an outsider coming in. And so we value those people, but we need to grow our own. And this group will help us grow our own administrators to take the place of those of us who are quite mature and maybe leaving, within the next 10 years. We want to prepare those leaders so they can be the principals that we need and the county office staff that we need to make sure that students have equitable access to quality learning experiences, and for the existing county administrators to work with this group. They'll work with this group along with an SREB critical friend. And the last is the Classroom Assessment Network. Well, if you look at the 7 standards for effective schools, one of them is progress monitoring. This is a research-based, research-driven program. It's not even a program, it's a practice, it's a protocol, a procedure for teachers to use. and engaging PLCs with their professional peers to link assessment and instruction in a research-driven process so that we can have effective learning. And that will be led by Principals Faye Pritchard and Tammy Chambers, who have been to this training twice in their career and are ready to roll this out with our county. Okay, that's Wetzel County Schools. Are there any questions about where we are? You guys good with the cohesiveness of this? Okay, just want to make sure, because this is how I plan for us to proceed, and wanted to make sure that you guys felt the same way. Next thing I want to talk about is we probably need to talk about when we're going to set my goals. Maybe in the next meeting, we put that on the agenda. Would that be okay with you guys?
I would like that. I think we need to set the goals earlier than what we have.
Okay, I don't know if you wanted to, I just wanted to get that out there. And I think now that we have the goals set for the county, and we're in a good place as far as teachers understanding how the state standards and the strategic plan goals fit, I thought it might be a good time for that. If it's not, I just wanted to put it on your radar that we are ready for that, if you're ready for that.
I think in the past, it's always been done sometime in September.
Okay,
Yes.
so we're not too far off then?
No.
Right,
Do a
okay.
special meeting, maybe. We do not normally do that in a special meeting, just isolate it.
We have,
Yes.
if we want to have a special meeting.
I think it'd probably be easier if it was in a special meeting outside of a regular board meeting.
Okay.
In the sense that, because it can be time consuming.
Exactly,
To
okay.
go through all the different things as it relates, and in the past, that's been the practice.
Okay.
So we just need to send us a few dates that work for you, and we'll check it with all the board members, and we can call for a special meeting to deal just specifically with superintendent goals.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you. Also wanted to put on your radar the LSIC meetings. We've done them at different times during the year. We've done the September through November situation, and then last year we did them all in one fell swoop in March. So I kind of wanted to put that on your radar so you guys could be thinking about that and let me know, and you guys can decide how you want to proceed with that so that my principals can know and be ready to get their presentations together. Their strategic plans are finished, they've been submitted, and they need to know when they need to have their LSIC meetings in so they can come and prepare for you guys. So there's that. We talked a little bit before the meeting just with a few of us, but I just think we need to bring up that the West Virginia School Board Association meeting is offered both virtually and in person, and that if you decide you want to do the virtual option, we will have it here at the county office, and you can come here, and if you want to go in person, make sure Mrs. Simmons knows, and we can get reservations for you.
I didn't think virtual was an option.
They just did it today.
Today
They
was
just sent it out today.
Just sent it out today. I just have to notify them either way, cause you have to get the, login information so she can keep track of your hours.
Can you watch it after the fact?
That will be another option.
It is.
I'll definitely watch it after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last thing is, we have a real school, I feel like Pinocchio, that the center, the Wetzel County Technical Education Center is kind of our Pinocchio. They're a real school, and they have to keep convincing themselves they are, and they shouldn't have to. And they're getting more and more kids coming through their doors. Mrs. McPherson, do we have numbers yet? I know that some high schools are still sending more, but do we have a roundabout number?
Total of 60.
60 coming in. Where did we start?
The first group we had was
Was it 20?
no, the very first year.
Oh, okay, was it 12?
Very first year was like 12.
12, right, and then okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are growing, and the need for these jobs and these certifications in our area are definitely growing. With that occurring, the school secretary position is becoming an issue there, and there's some help that is needed down there. I may be coming to you in the near future asking for a school secretary position at that facility. I also may be asking you for help in our, is it accounting department, Jeff?
Finance.
Finance, I'm sorry, finance department. We have so much money that is coming through now, so much more money than we have had, that the work up there is getting stressful, and I may be coming to you asking, for your permission to get some help upstairs in the finance department. I will tell you that Mr. Lancaster found this as a surprise when I came and talked to him. I, after speaking with some of the secretaries, realized what kind of money is going through up there, and I may be coming and asking for that, so I wanted you to be aware that that may be coming your way. Other than that, I do want to talk about not our COVID policy necessarily, but there was an email that went out today. There was a survey that was taken by all the counties, and they asked us if we were requiring masks, if we weren't requiring masks, and I of course put that masks were optional unless we were in red. Well, when the report came back and was given to all the superintendents in the state, it came back that Wetzel County is optional. So if the press would happen to get a hold of that, that is not entirely true. We are optional at this point unless we are in the red, which we are. I did receive some communication from Wetzel County Hospital that asked us to please consider not only masking up in the red, but also if we were in the orange, and our pandemic response team will take that under advisement, and we will get back with you depending on how that pandemic response team meeting goes. And I think I've given you enough today, and that's all I have.
Unfortunately, I don't think you'll be needing to come back to us very soon.
I know.
On the color. We're not gonna be out red for quite a while.
I know.
Just looking at it, but anyway.
I agree. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Were you gonna speak to the meeting that you're having tomorrow, Superintendent? Were you gonna relate that later on in this meeting? Did you have the virtual meeting?
We do have a meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I'm glad you brought that up. I can do it at any time. We have the state superintendent has called a meeting. He called it today for all the superintendents in the state. We meet at 10 o'clock tomorrow. And the agenda is the following: COVID updates, school outbreaks, quarantine protocols, IEPs and virtual schools, and vaccine clinics. So it's clear from all of those that this pandemic is number one and in the minds of the State Department, and that is why that meeting is being called.
I didn't want to leapfrog into that, but that kind of is going to fit into some of the other things that we might be talking about this evening and
Right.
everything, because it's like last year, it's all in a state of flux and everything.
Yes, yes. Okay, thank you.
Board members, any other questions relating to the superintendent's information?
I just have one. I was gonna maybe mention it later. Last year, we had a new board elected, new board members. Because of the pandemic and so forth, we were never able to have a workshop with the superintendent and the administration, the principals. We did that in the past. I don't know that we don't need to have a resort or anything like that. Something we could do here. I know other counties have done that recently. I just think it's productive to hear from those administrators, especially the principals who are out there in the schools.
I agree.
And get a relationship between the board and the administrators.
I think that would be nice.
If the rest of the board feels that way, I don't.
Actually, Mr. Andrew, that's something that I brought up a while ago. I didn't want to put too much on your plate since you were just starting into the position, but I agree. I think they're very productive. And I said the same thing. We don't need to go to a resort.
No.
So Mrs. Fawner, did she say something?
She said she agreed.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, just put that on the radar to
Okay.
maybe
Sounds good.
we can do a workshop and we'd find appropriate time.
Things get settled down. You know, today's the first day of school. I didn't expect it to be tomorrow. And I just think it would be something that would be productive.
I agree. During the accountabilities part, I'll talk about the first day of school. So.
Any other questions? Next item on the agenda then is, under superintendent's recommendations, the approval of the minutes from the August 9th meeting.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the August 9th minutes.
It has been moved to accept the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Has been moved and properly seconded. Are there any questions concerning the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda are personnel matters. There's some retirements and resignations, both professional and service personnel. Issues. Are there any questions concerning personnel matters? Is there a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the superintendent's recommendations as outlined under personnel matters.
I'll second that.
It has been moved and properly seconded. Again, are there any questions, concerns about personnel matters? Not hearing any, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda are routine matters. Request and release from Wetzel County Schools, an article of agreement between Fairmont State University College of Nursing and Wetzel County Board of Education, which board members you have in your packet. And the compliance issue of policy 1224.1 to approve those fundraising groups that are listed there on your agenda. Are there any questions about these routine matters?
I move to approve the routine matters.
Has been moved to approve the routine matters. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Has been moved and properly seconded. Again, are there any questions or concerns about the routine matters? Not hearing any, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Routine matters carry. The next item on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Anything for us tonight, Mr. Lancaster?
Yes, in front of you, you have several budget supplements that I'm asking for approval tonight. The first section is, includes several CTE grants, Career Technical Education. They changed some of the ways that they're allocating those funds this year, which I think will be to our advantage. It just started with some changeover down in Charleston. But there's some supplements there for CTE, and some of that is our normal CTE. Some of it is the 100 High School Baking and Pastry Program is receiving from the state $14,585. The robotics program at 100 High School is receiving $14,395. So we're always appreciative of that, and appreciative of 100 High School for going after that money. They do a good job with that. The second grant, there is a one-time emergency operational payment for child nutrition because of some of the changes we've had in the past, during the pandemic. They're sending us $209,733 to help offset some of our child nutrition costs. We have the annual early literacy grant, which helps us with our Birth to 3 campaign here in Wetzel County, in the amount of $30,856. We have an SRAB High Schools That Work grant for $10,000 to help with some professional development there. And we also have a Tech Centers That Work SRAB professional development amount of $2,500 that'll help us with some PD out in that location. That's all that I have for you this evening.
Board members, are there any questions about those transfers and increases in the budget? Not hearing any, is there a motion?
I move that we approve transfers and increases in the budget.
I second.
Has been moved and properly seconded. I'll ask if there are any questions concerning the treasurer's report. Not hearing any, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the second reading of revised Wetzel County policy, IIP, the virtual learning policy. Simply remind the board that was just a very slight change in terms of grade level. It originally said 7 through 12, and now it was by state required to say 6 through 12. That's the only change in that original policy. Are there any questions concerning the policy? Not hearing any, is there a motion to accept on second reading?
Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading revised Wetzel County policy, IIP, virtual learning policy.
I'll second that.
Has been moved and properly seconded. I'll ask for questions or concerns about the policy. Not hearing any, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on your agenda is a tabled issue from our last meeting, as we had been going through various policy revisions and changes and deletions. A policy, also as part of that packet of policies was a new policy, relations with outside groups, that we were required to formulate. Some questions did come up in the last meeting about that, and so it got tabled to this meeting. And so it is now back on the table for discussion and vote this evening. Are there any questions, thoughts, or concerns about this policy?
Was the wording a part of this policy from the legal?
My understanding from the policy, we did reach out from the policy committee group with Mr. Farkas's leadership, and we reached out, and their recommendation is still to leave the policy as written, with no changes. That's the legal recommendation from our legal people.
They didn't seem to think that we could make an exception for employee organizations and associations.
They did not, and just, Mr. Farkas, you're free to chime in here because you were in the direct communication with them. So
Yes,
I'll be
when I
glad
spoke
to
with the
do
attorney,
it.
she said that employee organizations are not school or BOE entities, and they do not have special access to distribute this, and it needs to go with that it's written to have prior approval from the president.
So legal basically felt like everybody, if it's a third-party entity, ought to be considered the same.
I asked her specifically from the last board, you all asked me to follow up to see if it was only when it was something to be distributed to students, and she said no. And that her legal recommendation, she said it was strongly to leave it as is.
So that I understand this correctly, that anything that's posted or distributed on, like, under section D, right at the clear to end of section D, it has to have that disclaimer on it?
Correct. If it's coming from a third if it's coming from somebody other than the school, if it's the school, then obviously not, because they're representing themselves. This is about third-party relationships. This policy only affects outside groups. It doesn't affect internal groups that are actually part of the school.
So as an example, if the WBEA put something out, it would have to have that disclaimer on it?
If it's on paper and it's distributed inside one of our properties, then yes.
Was this a requirement of the legislature?
I believe it's a requirement from the legislature, but she said legally, this is something that every Board of Education should have in their policy, and several do.
It came up through the process of the policy revisions that our legal counsel suggested that we needed something like this in our policy manual. That's how it came to be.
She was surprised that I've questioned her about this twice now, that this is very common language across the state.
Is there any reason why, let's use your example, why the WBEA could not put their own disclaimer, put this disclaimer as required on it, but then also put their own disclaimer saying that, that the employees of Wetzel County Schools that are members of WBEA, support the information in my handout.
I mean, I don't.
And then that would give them an out, not an out, but it would give them an option to where they can have our disclaimer.
They would need their own disclaimer for their own materials.
Well, it's the fact that it's saying that it's their employees sponsoring. And I understand that that's,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking that if they were able to put their own thing on there saying that, I can't come up with the right thing in my head to truly verbalize what I'm trying to say.
And I'll just tell you where I'm at, and I get it. The problem is with all this kind of thing, you're trying to avoid the 1% of problems, and 99% of folks get affected by it. It's just the way legalities work. You're always trying to protect yourself against that small percentage, not necessarily the larger percentage of issues that come up. But my feeling simply is if we've got a policy that relates to outside entities, then everybody's on the same playing field. Everybody's got to behave and act the same as it relates to that. I don't know if we start down a rabbit hole of, well, we're going to exempt this group, then the minute we exempt one segment, I guarantee somebody's going to come and say, well, if you exempted them, why not exempt me? And we'll be chasing that rabbit hole, down that rabbit hole for infinity. And so that, although I'm sympathetic to it, I don't necessarily feel like there's some grave danger that we're putting ourselves in by letting them distribute, but I just feel like if we're gonna have a policy, then everybody that's not the school just needs to be living by the same set of guidelines.
I think everybody that's worked in the county or been around the county for a long time is used to the fact that the principal is the person that authorizes things to be done. I think the wording of this is just kind of throwing people off. I mean, because it's got, it's prior review of the principal, which is under D, the underlined part right below distribution and posting of literature. I think everybody's comfortable probably with the principal saying okay, but just all the other words that are thrown in there just makes it seem threatening to me. I mean, and just at first glance. I mean, I understand what it's doing, but just when you start reading those words, you're thinking, holy mackerel.
And I agree, but the very next thing, the superintendent shall establish administrative guidelines which ensure compliance with the Equal Access Act and related state policies. And right there, if, say, 10 years down the road, somebody is having trouble getting their information out because of a rift between that agency, that organization, and the principal, they've got the right to go to the superintendent. So I don't have any problems with that. And Mr. Price, I do agree with you that not to make a list of we're going to exempt them or them, because there's always going to be another group. That's why in my mind I was thinking that if they were able to put their own saying, their own, I'll call it a disclaimer, but that's probably not even the right word, then it would counter it, I guess, in a way. But I agree that to make a list is creating an issue.
Well, and I think and the other side of that is that if we leave it alone, I think we can create a consistent approach. Mrs. Wilson sit down and create an administrative approach, and now the principals aren't having to process it in a sense. They're not having to try to debate, well, does this fall under this category? Does it fall under that? Here's the litmus test for everybody, and if it falls into the category, it gets approved and it goes out the door. It simplifies. I don't want to put more work on the principals trying to make judgment calls. I think the idea here is to get the judgment call kind of out of the way and create, here's the policy, and then here's the administrative rules, and that's how we're going to go about it.
And the Equal Access Act will kind of protect that anyway. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What does the Equal Access Act basically say?
It gives guidelines for people that, and I haven't read it in forever, but it gives guidelines for people so that somebody can't arbitrarily say no to something being distributed or give more access to one group over another. They are guidelines that they can follow. It's very well laid out.
Is that a state law or is that a federal?
I think that's federal.
Okay. just in case somebody
Yeah.
would, you know,
It may be a state law, but I thought for some reason it was federal.
okay,
But I just know that it's, you know, it's like any really good policy. It tells you what you need to do, and if we have guidelines that go along with it and take that into consideration and develop a good protocol for the county, then if anyone would give preferential treatment to one group over another, or not allow a group to do it, and it didn't follow what the Equal Access Act, or any of our state policies said, then a superintendent could say, you know, you have to follow this when you do it. When you grant access for distribution of those materials.
And I do wanna, I'll be quiet then. I wanna make this clear though. When it comes to that disclaimer, we absolutely do not want our staff members, our secretaries, our people feeling like they're the ones obligated to make sure that gets on there. It is the responsibility of the third party. It's the responsibility of the outside entity to get a copy of this disclaimer and put it on their materials before it gets distributed. Because the last thing I want to do is create more work for our staff over outside relations. So it's the obligation of the outside entity to get a digital copy of this disclaimer and print it on their materials before it can be approved. And they can't be expecting the principal and or the secretaries and or the science team, whoever, to be handling that aspect for them. It is not about making the staff at the school handle that. It's about the outside entity handling that.
Mr. Price, I'm glad you said that. I had one principal reach out to me today as they were gonna send some papers home, and they wanted that disclaimer wording. And I told them the second read was tonight, if it was passed, and I would send that out, but let them know that it's not the secretary's responsibility.
No.
That they need to put it on the third party.
That's right.
And they understood that, so that seemed to make the principal more comfortable with that as well.
I have something, that just is irritating me, in this, and that's at number 3 at the very end. The views expressed may or may not reflect those of the district or school administration are neither, it's a run-on sentence. I'm guessing the word should be and are neither approved nor disapproved by them. The very last sentence in D. The views expressed may or may not reflect those of the district or school administration and are neither approved nor disapproved by them. But otherwise, unless I'm reading this incorrectly, that's a run-on sentence.
yeah, I think and's missing, right?
That's what I think is missing.
The word and is missing
It
right
should-
before.
Yeah, between administration and are.
Do you have any English teachers in the room?
I think that's correct. I think it's
No, I'm just
and would be.
So and are neither, correct?
Yes.
Well, before we go any further, I make a motion that we amend the disclaimer to include the word and in front of the R.
A second.
Has been moved and properly seconded. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We are amended in that fashion, thank you. All right, now we'll handle the legal use. Any other questions
Do
about
I
policy?
understand correctly that Mrs. Wells or somebody at the board office is gonna outline a policy for the principals to follow, basically?
It will be guidelines. Yeah.
Guidelines, yeah, or
If the
policy.
board would desire a policy, we can do that.
No,
But,
scratch the word policy.
Okay.
Guidelines.
right,
You don't want any more policy.
thank you.
And it's in the, it's already in the policy that that's
Mhm.
your job.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions about the policy? I'm not sure what the will of the board is, but we'll make a motion and see what happens. I'll move that we accept the policy as, with this amendment we've already made, but accept this policy on second reading. Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Are there any further comments or questions about the policy?
Is
I
it?
have-
Go ahead, Mrs. Cooley.
I just have one question, cause I'm trying to play it out in my head. And I'm thinking of company ABC coming in, wanting to distribute some information kid-related, and they have, one flyer and 2 brochures. They can put the disclaimer on the banner, the flyer. What about the brochures?
Everything,
Everything?
Anything that's being distributed.
yes.
Would it be acceptable if they took the brochures and stapled them together? And where I'm at is I'm thinking they've already got their printed material, so to add that disclaimer,
Doesn't it say in this policy, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Barkus, doesn't it say any literature distributed or yeah, okay.
No
Any
outside.
literature distributed or posted pursuant to this policy. I guess you could staple it, that, I don't know, you guys can,
Well,
you guys.
I don't even think that needs to come
Yeah,
out of, that would just
yeah.
come out of your administrative rules.
Yes.
How you wanna handle that would come out of
Okay.
your administrative
Yeah.
rules.
And if somebody already has something printed, they could add a label on that has the disclaimer.
Mhm.
Correct. Any other questions?
Does this get some kind of designation besides relations with outside groups?
Yes, once it's approved, then it will get put into the policy manual
So-
with it.
It'll be in section K.
Yeah,
Okay.
just because it didn't exist prior is why I did that one yet.
It will actually be KD.
Any other questions or concerns about the policy? Thank you all for working through that. It has been moved and properly seconded. Not hearing any further questions or comments. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
One. Next item on the agenda is a discussion and possible action regarding local policy providing paid COVID leave. Are there any, this kinda came up a little bit and we kinda said, let's hang on here and make sure we get this on an agenda if we're gonna talk about it. So board members, any questions or comments about?
I would think that if Mrs. Wells is having a superintendent's meeting tomorrow about all this type of stuff, should we hold off until she's had that meeting?
That's a good point. We can.
I mean,
work-
if you would go retroactive with this, you know, if you wanna wait, and at least would we go retroactive so that those people who follow the
Could we still have a
spirit of the
discussion?
policy,
Absolutely.
I think we'd be okay.
Since it's on the agenda, we can, if we wanna talk about it a little bit, and if we wanna, if after that discussion, we decide to hold off on a vote, then we can always do that. Because I think we were kind of prepared to talk about it a little bit, so I think we should go ahead and do that. The board members, go ahead if you, Mr. Giggs, you have.
And I have several comments.
Sure.
Mr. Lancaster, the FFCRA expired on December 31st.
Correct.
Did we have employees after December 31st apply for COVID leave?
Yes.
Okay. Did they receive it?
Yes. We offered it, we extended it to June 30th
Okay.
for local leave, the local policy, and we had plenty of employees with that.
Well, I see that in here. Is that necessary to be in there if we've already done that?
Well, this expired on June 30th.
Oh, okay, it expired on June 30th.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, have we had anyone since June 30th apply for it?
Well, we don't have anything to apply for after June 30th, but we have had some people inquire about it.
Okay. I want to make a statement. The vast majority of our employees have done what they were supposed to do. They've been vaccinated, they wear masks, and so forth. Now, that doesn't ensure that they're not going to get COVID. Even if you've had both vaccines, you could get COVID. And I'm for that. Now, we've never mandated that employees get vaccinated for COVID. I passed out something to other board members that if you make that decision as an individual not to be vaccinated, then I think you should not expect to be compensated by the board if you contract COVID and then want paid leave for it. So that's why I passed out, I gave Mrs. Wells one and each board member one, and Linda, I will read for you what I said. This policy would be in effect only for those employees who have been fully vaccinated for COVID-19 or are in the process of being vaccinated for COVID-19 receive the first injection. Employees who, because of pre-existing medical conditions, are not physically able to be vaccinated for COVID-19 would be eligible for paid COVID-19 leave provided they have documentation from a licensed medical physician stating those pre-existing medical conditions that prohibit being vaccinated. Then I went on to say the Wetzel County Board of Education has been and will continue to promote and encourage all adults and students age 12 and above to be vaccinated for COVID-19, which we've done. We've had student representatives and so forth on Facebook and so forth. But that is, I'm a strong believer in that. You know, if everyone had been vaccinated, we wouldn't be going through what we're going through now. And so at this point in time, I think if we're going to, and I know there are just a few out in our school system that have not been vaccinated. And that's their choice. I'm not going to make them. I don't believe it should be mandatory. But they ought to know that there's consequences by not doing that. And they know that they're in with children, that their chances of catching COVID have increased. And so, you know, and the reason why I asked that, Mr. Lang, is because I know that we had some young teachers who had not received their first vaccine because they hadn't gotten their turn in line and contracted COVID. So I'm glad that they were compensated during that time. But that's my feeling. It's also my feeling, I'm not going to say that every employee that should be vaccinated, but we're not going to require them. At this point in time, I'm willing to hear what the rest of the board believes, but I believe if an employee chooses not to be vaccinated and they get COVID, they should not be eligible for COVID leave. They need to use their regular sick leave. One other quick question on this policy, Mrs. Wells. The paragraph said these COVID-19 days can be taken intermittently. Although it would be expected these days would be consecutive in a quarantine scenario. I would hope that, but I hate to have that in there that somehow somebody manipulates it so they can use a day here and a day there. Is that possible, Mr. Cook?
Very possible.
Testing is odd.
I know.
I just had my daughter, my youngest, tested 3 times within a 2-week period. And it's very odd in the waiting time. And
You would hope that people wouldn't take advantage of the situation.
yes,
Yes, that's what
Yes,
I'm.
I don't think there's gonna be that many people that do take advantage of it, but there are some out there that
I mean,
pretty consistently do the same stuff year after year, one way or another.
But most people, if it was an intermittent issue, it would not be purposely.
And we discussed that previously when we passed the first one. You're always gonna have, like Mr. Cook said, you're gonna have a small group of people that are gonna try to beat the system or whatever you wanna, however you wanna phrase it. What do we do about the booster part? It's talking about.
Well, I wouldn't think the booster would be something that we would be concerned with now. It's coming, but I wouldn't think we want to.
We don't even have that option.
We don't even have that option yet, not the booster.
Yeah.
But this policy will be, what is considered to be fully vaccinated? Because it's the government saying that you need the third dose, I think. They may discuss that in the Zoom meeting tomorrow, but, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not a
Right.
medical
But Mr.
professional.
Yeager said as long as they were in the process of getting fully vaccinated, maybe they only had the first and they still had to, that you could use it.
Yes, and the booster could be part of that
Part of the
process.
Let's, if we want, if we're gonna
Correct.
consider that, that's fine.
I'm just wary of enacting anything that we can't legally ask for and enforce, and I don't know the answer to that, what we can. Those are the things that make me nervous about that, but I'm not an attorney, I don't know for sure.
The challenge would be, could you, if you could enact a policy, but then could you even
How do we
legally
prove
require
it? How do we
somebody to
know?
show it?
Could we run it past the lawyer?
We could.
And if it's okay, make it retroactive?
We can always ask the attorney.
And again, I think we're talking about a very small number of employees.
We're talking about it was 565 days that were used last year for COVID leave. Since the beginning of this pandemic, so it's not a small amount. 565 days, $105,000 worth of salary. Not all of that was. Some of it was federal, paid through federal, but
Well, the science says if you've had both vaccines, the odds of you contracting COVID again are in your, the odds are very high that you won't.
Can you look at
Now,
the
there are
number?
some individuals that have, and that's gonna happen.
Can you look at number 2 on that policy, and what are the odds that somebody is experiencing symptoms of COVID-19? Pretty good. So a lot of us have.
And what I said, if they've received their vaccine, then they are entitled to the leave.
If I may, today it was announced that the Pfizer vaccine was officially approved for it was granted full approval
By the FDA.
by the FDA. The other vaccines are still on that emergency use, and I'm concerned how that would play out legally. And I'm sure this is going to be something that businesses across the country are going to be looking into, and hopefully something that's going to be brought up in your phone call tomorrow as well. Just wanted to.
These vaccines are on it.
Well, let me. I'm mulling this, Jay. I'm trying to think. I mean, at first I hadn't even, that hadn't hit my radar, and so I'm, and not that it's wrong, it's just hadn't hit my radar. I was wondering in my mind whether if we enacted a policy related to COVID leave, that maybe instead we would have within that policy that if their quarantine and or contraction of COVID could be reasonably connected to their work for Wetzel County Schools, then they could have to leave. In other words, you could reasonably connect the fact that they had 2 children come in their classroom that ended up testing positive. Now I'm unwell and I end up being positive. We could reasonably connect that it likely happened in that classroom, and they would qualify. And that's where my mind was. And again, and when I say reasonably, I mean that's obviously going to be somewhat judgment. But I think that if there's nobody that they're around in a school environment that is positive then most likely it came from some other source. And I guess maybe my mind is simply this. I mean, and I didn't. Of course, Amy didn't. But I didn't live in the education world. My wife lives in the education world. I don't live in the education. And I think about public world, and they wouldn't even be talking about. They wouldn't be even having a discussion about added days to sick leave that's already been given. so I'm trying to balance all that. It's hard for me sometimes to balance all that. I mean, I'd be more than willing to entertain an idea if we could come up with a viable way to do it, to say, listen, if the problem was originated with us, then we can give you some extra time. But how do I differentiate? You know, I give this person it was in a classroom, there was a couple kids that were sick, that now they're sick, and they get their 10 days. And here was a guy that was at a bachelor party last week, and he got COVID, and he gets his 10 days. There's a piece of my brain that says that's not right. And there's just a part of my mind that says that's not right. That's just me. I'm just telling you the way I think. If we could reasonably show that the issue was related to their work for Wetzel County Schools, then let's give them some extra time so they don't have to exhaust their banked time or whatever they had. If they can't reasonably demonstrate that, then as they would with anything else that they would have to address in life, then use the time that's already allotted, which is fairly considerate, especially when you consider they can roll it over from year to year to year, which in many, if not most industries, it just doesn't happen. So.
I understand your line of thinking and agree with it, but I also think that it's going to be a huge task to find out what's, to do detective work about, okay, how were you exposed, or how were you not exposed, and I don't know if anybody wants to go down that road. I mean, it's, you know what I'm saying, it's the contact tracing sometimes gets to be complicated anyway, and I don't know that any of us want to spend that kind of time. Well, it wouldn't be us, it'd be Mrs. Wells or Mr. Barkus or somebody else trying to figure out how they were contracted there.
Are we hiring someone specifically for
We are.
the contact tracing?
We are. In fact, that posting should be up by the end of the week.
Well, I'm not mandating vaccinating. I'm certainly highly intrigued by this policy.
And I do want to suggest, so I can get it all off my chest, the survey that I started before the meeting 2 weeks ago, I've received a few more responses. Again, I don't have all the responses. I have 26 counties that have responded out of the 55. So there may be other ones that are, but of that, 25, and it may change tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen in your meeting. I mean, I heard Ms. Fonner say that, but there are 25 counties that are not planning on extending anything. And there is one county, Mercer County, that is planning on extending. There was one county that was questionable before, and that was Marion County, and they enacted at their last board meeting to stop. They didn't have a deadline like we do on ours, and they enacted to stop it. Now, I know some groups are going to come and discuss that, but that's just the background from what I have here. Thought it's worthwhile for you to know.
And I'd like to say that we're in a unique position as educators that we require teachers to come back and their job cannot be isolated from people. Our product is a person, and we deal with people and human beings, and teachers are required in order to do their job to be with people. So that does make us a little different than other industries. And we are required to be with people who, go home to families and we know nothing about what happens, and they have their own little lives outside of it, and they come back and bring all of that with them into a classroom. So that, for that very reason, I would like to see us consider offering the paid COVID leave, because the nature of our business is to be with people, and I would like to value the fact that our teachers have no choice. They have to be with people in order to do their job. Now, Mr. Price, you do bring up a really good point, is that some of this is not caused by students carrying it to them or other coworkers, having COVID and then possibly getting it in a PLC or at lunchtime or whatever. But, and we would hope that people would be honest, but, if it would be a daunting task and if it could not be done, I would rather err on the side of providing paid COVID leave to people that are required to be in close contact with children behind a closed door for a good part of the day. So, just my 2 cents.
I don't know how I feel about, the addition. And it's, because in a way I feel like it's attacking people's personal choice. But at the same time, I understand where you're coming from, considering this is an additional pay. I really don't know how I feel in that regards. I would like to say that I'd like to see us offer something. But I almost feel like that's picking and choosing. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how. Okay, to skip that part. If we're concerned that somebody's going to abuse it, even though it may happen, it may not, but one way to get around that is to not let anyone use it for seeking the medical diagnosis, but only use it for confirmed quarantine time, whether they're positive or forced into quarantine due to exposure. That's just an option. There was one more. Hold on. Nope, it'll come to me. I knew I should have written it down.
I
Lastly,
still feel we could make a decision tonight.
No.
And it'll be changed tomorrow after the meeting.
Exactly. I do want to make one statement. When I was a child, we stood in line out on Main Street to receive oral vaccines for polio. Polio has been eradicated because everyone received vaccinated. In the same way with smallpox. Horrible, terrible diseases. And at this point in time, we can't seem, now we've been over a year with this COVID. And if we had been vaccinated up to the 70% level, we may not be going through what we're going through today with us being red, students out in the schools having to be excluded because they have COVID, or they're going to have to stay home because they've been exposed to COVID. So again, I'm just an advocate for the vaccination. If we're going to get back to normal, everybody has to get vaccinated. And I know that's probably stepping on somebody's personal rights, but and that's where I'm saying we're not mandating it, but I like to reward the people who are doing the right thing. And that's all I've got to say about it.
Well, and I appreciate everything. Did it
I
come
did,
back
I
to you?
did, yes.
Go ahead.
Did you see me write it down?
No, I just saw the light bulb over your head, but go ahead.
You made the comment to reward them for doing the right thing. And yet there were times in the spring when we had issues with not everybody was wearing their masks when it was mandated.
And I agree with it. I agree with what you're saying there. Yes, they should have been wearing masks.
Correct. And so I just, I see the situation where you've got person A that is not vaccinated but following all safety precautions, and person B that is vaccinated but not following safety precautions. And I don't know, it's just one of those things where if we start making exceptions, like we were discussed earlier, the list is going to keep going on and on.
my recommendation, unless somebody has a motion as it relates to this, if we're gonna get new information potentially out of the meeting tomorrow, I would just simply say, unless somebody has a motion, and I'll pause and breathe. I'm not hearing any motion, so we can, so no, just discussion, so no action tonight on this item, just put it back on the next agenda. Thank you. And we can come back then, and we'll hear what the state has to say in that 2-week stretch. We can retro date it, if we need to, we can make it effective back, to today, opening day, or whatever we wanna do as it relates to that. So the 2 weeks isn't gonna hurt as it relates to that. We can always come back and restate it. Or predate it. Next item on the agenda is, board member committee reports. I'll mention just briefly, I did receive an email from Mr. Burkus today, and we're gonna policy's gonna be on hold for a little while until legal gets caught up with some of the other things they're dealing with. And so policy will be on hold for a little while, and maybe we'll catch our breath with policy, in the meantime. Any other committee reports?
Multi-board meeting will be Thursday, so, and hopefully they'll be able to give us some numbers, because they will have their attendance, and I don't think we've ever gotten the numbers set up to us yet, right?
No.
Yeah, we'll ask for them again.
Any other committee reports? Mrs. Golden, anything on accountability tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the opening day. We divided and conquered today and went out to different schools in the county, and I'd like for everybody in the county office that went to schools today to talk about some of the good things that you saw out there. I went to 100 High School, started my morning at 100 High School. It was like a pep rally kind of welcome and introduction of everybody, and the kids were very upbeat, everybody in their masks, staff, kids. One kid had to be reminded, but he immediately went and got it on, and it was a fantastic way to start our day, very positive, very, I stayed for the club, the grade level meetings and the club meetings, and a lot of talk about academics, and a lot of talk about co-curricular student organizations like TSA and FFA, and lots of student interest in band and that sort of thing, and choir, and in the academic groups. I'm just very, very pleased with what I saw at 100 High School. Then I went to Longdrain School after that, and their theme for the year is a Mr. Rogers neighborhood theme, and they even have the train as you walk in, which I think they're actually going to give to Shortline when they're finished with it, but it's this beautiful train that came from a Bible school that the principal, where she goes to church, and they have all the rooms are different parts of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. The library, those of you that go out there know that librarian is just a fantastic artist, and she has the castle and then the train and all of the characters, and the excitement went out to the students, and the students were highly engaged, and there was a really wonderful feel in the whole school, and a buzz. And then we went down, and the nurse gave a COVID talk with the students and told them the procedures and things that they needed to do and what would be in place for them, and they all seemed to understand it, and a real focus on relationships and family at that school in particular, a very family feel and very family atmosphere. So I was very happy with my first day out and about, and would like for the other people. Mr. Cook, we'll go with you first today. Would like to talk about your visits?
No. I started my day off at Magnolia. Got to speak to the staff and the students for 10 or 15 minutes. I don't know how long it was. It was probably a lot longer for them than it actually was. About what it meant to me to be a graduate from Magnolia, and they seemed pretty receptive. They had that cold stared look that you get on the day one, and like I said, it was good. The kids all had their masks on. Everybody seemed pretty upbeat and were ready to go. Left there, went down to Page City, visited Page City High School. They were in the classrooms at that time, so I just kind of meandered around a little bit. Hit Page City Elementary, did pretty much the same thing, and in the afternoon hit New Martinsville School. and spend some time down there. We had a pretty interesting day one staff meeting down there when we were speaking. We got invaded by a bat in the middle of me talking, so I think the bat was the highlight of my speech. And then she took over, and Mr. Wells took over, and the bat continued to play, and it kept everybody's attention anyway for a while. And, very, very good first day with all the teachers down there. Actually, it was the second day. It was our professional meeting day, which I'm glad we did that. I hope we continue to do, things like that where we all come together and get an opportunity to see everybody and talk to them. And I think it was good. It was really good. My first day was excellent, and the kids seemed to be pretty upbeat in every classroom. There was always a couple saying, "I don't want to be here," but for the most part, they were all pretty upbeat about being there. And the afternoon, they were getting tired, just like the rest of us. But they kept, pushing along. Everything seemed to be going pretty well. Yeah, well, we'll talk about that. The state is looking at a program called the Purple Star School Designation Program, which they just came out with from the state superintendent's message last Friday. Mrs. Wells had given it to me last week to look into, and I thought it was pretty cool as far as that. Basically, I'm going to have a resolution for you all to sign off on to say that we are going to be a Purple Star School Designation Program, and then all the principals will have to sign off on it. But really, it is showing support for our military families, for the kids that have parents that are going off on active duty, wherever they may be going, deployment, post-deployment, pre-deployment, but whatever phase they're in, we're showing support, and there's somebody at each one of the schools that'll be a point of contact for them, and I'll be the main point of contact here from the central office. Each person that's point of contact has to do some training and take a test. I think it's about a 30-minute training, take a test, and then they can get the principal to sign off on their training to be the point of contact. And there's a lot of military people out there in each one of the buildings. I know, for example, in Magnolia, you have the guidance counselor there, Mr. Gomez. Mr. Gomez, yes. He would probably be a very good one to lean on for all that stuff. But just anybody that's gone through all that has a lot of knowledge to pass on to these parents and things. We have to put a link on each homepage of each school, and then our boards goes to this coming home website that has a bunch of different places and links to go to for support network for the families. So there's a lot to reach out to, and it's kind of linking the military families with the military people in our state that has the answers that can help. And then we also, each school will have to, come up with a couple of different programs they'll do per year to be actually designated to get the award, because there's an award that's given out every year for the schools that follow through and do this and provide that support for our military families. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was well overdue that somebody actually steps up and does something like that. So I was very pleased when she handed it to me and said, "Will you look into this?" And after I looked into it, I said, "I'll definitely jump on it."
Well, it fits right in with our family engagement too, with the
And
goals. I mean,
absolutely.
it makes total sense.
And we're not only taking care of them, while they're here, but we're trying to take care of them after, they grow up and they become military too. So that's going to continue happening as far as I know for years to come. So
When you say each school, is that the 4 high schools or?
that's
all
everybody.
nine? Okay.
That's every school.
Okay.
Yes, because the kids, their parents, however old they are, it's good that they have. I wish my son would have had somebody to lean on, that had some of that whenever I deployed a couple of times, because he was always getting in trouble. And had they been thinking in the mindset of, well, his dad's deployed and he was a principal, so he was getting in trouble before, but have somebody there for him to reach out to and recognize that kids have an issue, because their parents gone, and then give them a little latitude, on different things. So just somebody to talk to, more, mentor. So, but I think it's gonna be a really good program, and it's just now starting in West Virginia. And, like I said, I was pretty excited actually after I read into it a little bit. Anyway, I'll be coming to you guys for a resolution next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I got long-winded there.
No, you're good. You good?
Yeah, let's, Ms. Novotny has had lots of good trainings for her people recently, and, has also had a lot of, as we know, at the beginning of the year, IEPs change and, you know, student placement changes. She's been just extremely busy, and I know she has some things to share with you that, I think deserve some attention.
Thank you. Well, I didn't, really follow directions this morning and did not go to the school first thing, so I apologize for that. I was taking care of some things here in the office, but I did, get out and went out to Shortline School, where I saw Mrs. Stanford, and we had some, very productive meetings with the, principal and assistant out there, Teresa, and I was, really lucky to be there at the end of the day, so, beginning, and of course, everybody loves the end of the day, so I went out to, speak to some of the bus drivers and aides, and kids were coming out and getting on the bus, so I had some nice conversations with the kids and what their, day was like, and how happy they were to be getting on their lovely buses and going home. So all in all, I thought it was a good day, and, I'll keep you apprised of our, the issues that we're having. We're trying to work them all out right now, and it'll take some time, but I know we'll get there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lancaster, you went to Payton City Elementary and High School today, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
I for years I've been going to Payton City Elementary. I really enjoy it. I think they do a great job on their opening days. And I get there first thing because I want to see the kids come out, and there were a lot of people that, most of them excited and some of them crying, but I told the teachers to quit their whining. They've got to get into it. No, that for real, they do a great job at Payton City. They had a theme from the movie Up, which is a very good movie, a kids movie, and they had you know, a playhouse in the middle, and they had the kids taking their pictures with the balloons on the playhouse inside, and they do a good job. And the kids, there were only a few kids that were a little upset about going into school, but I understand that. But no, they do a really good job. Then went over to Payton City High School, and it's just business as usual. It's not as much fun at those ages because they know what they're getting into, and they're just going to work. But I do want to say one thing. I was talking to Mr. Barkus. Our facilities look outstanding. They really do. The inside, the outside, and a lot of credit to the employees that make that happen, because they really are. We're in great shape in this county.
You know, I told Mr. Lancaster when I used to be on the on-site team for the OEPA in 3 different counties around the state, our facilities are top notch. They really are.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Oh, Mr. McPherson.
I didn't make it there first thing this morning. I did spend some time at New Martinsville School. I'm glad to see they were rotating their students through a school safety presentation in an auditorium that was very good. And then walking the hallways, orderly, and if you could have imagined everybody without a mask, almost normal. You know what I mean? They were just, the kids happy to be there. I can speak from personal experience. My daughter gave it probably the highest stamp she would give it, and it was good. So, and that's about as far as we're going to get, but she had a blast. So.
Thank you very much. Mr. Batten.
I didn't make it to the schools the first thing. As far as Mr. Yeager, you know, that first bus run of the year is always, let's say interesting, you know, so, but, I did go to Long Drain and 100 and actually passed just as well as Wileyville, but I waved as he didn't. That's all right. But anyways,
I was trying to concentrate on my fantastic driving skills.
well, very good. Very good. But, yeah, I kind of agree with Mr. McPherson. You know, they were in masks, all of them were, but they really seemed excited to be in person. And that was kind of, you know, I spent a little time with both principals, and they were extremely excited about just the fact that you look back a year ago, and it was an A-B type situation, you know, so they really didn't get a chance to see maybe all their friends at one time, and now being in person, you know, all together, they were seemed really excited. It was exciting, walking through the halls, visiting with some teachers and just seeing the school, seeing actually the students back in the buildings, all together. So, and then just a couple other things, if you don't mind as well. Of course, transportation, last week we had, our 5 days, we had the in-service, Monday we had a couple state bus inspectors come in and give the in-service, mainly, going over all the inspections and so forth, and concentrating on loading and unloading. The driver, the operators and aides then went through we went through policies online, policies and required state policies and so forth. The drivers and aides all participated in evacuation training. It was under the guidance of Teresa Loy, which is one of our operators, plus Department of Ed certified trainers. So they went through that Wednesday afternoon, and want to thank Mrs. Smalls and Mr. Kimball for the use of their auditoriums. We could get the drivers in there. Couple other things under transportation and fuel management system. That equipment has arrived and is being programmed now and will be installed. There's a lot to programming that equipment. Under maintenance, of course, Jamie Doty and his crew have been working hard getting those schools prepared, and and a lot of credit goes to them for our facilities and so forth. On the facility side of it, Shortline School, HVAC, I don't know if anyone's been in there, but I thought it Thursday, it was extremely comfortable in there, so, and so the equipment is running. There's one more lift planned for tomorrow. There's some motor or pumps and stuff that must be lifted up into the mechanical room. So that lift is planned after all the buses have left and all the faculty and students have left. So they'll be making that lift. That'll be the last lift they'll need to do. They project being completely out of there in 2 weeks. And that's with all the adjustments and everything else that would be made. Valley High School, the greenhouse, that the concrete pad has been poured. The delivery is expected for tomorrow. We haven't heard much more about that or any type of a change, so we're still expecting that delivery for tomorrow. And security cameras, the upgrade, most of the wiring is all being pulled in, and then they'll go back and install all the equipment. So.
Thank you, Mr.
That's what I
Bradley.
got, Mrs. Wells, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. McPherson.
My day started off, of course, as we said, we're a real school,
Yes.
so just trying to get some final ends tied up at the center. Also had some troubleshooting to do in both child nutrition and with our nurses, so I was able to get out to Cadensville Elementary and spent some time there, worked with, I checked in on our nurses and definitely child nutrition department as well.
Thank you. Mr. Houston.
I'm tired, Mrs. Wells.
I know, Mr. Houston.
Making me real wordy today. I'd say I spent time at Magnolia this morning, caught the tail end of Mr. Cook's exciting, electrifying speech. And I was able to hear some great words from 2 fine student leaders of Magnolia addressing the students. Spent time with Mrs. Spaltz after they exited through the home rooms. Really seemed like everything was running pretty smoothly. Considering that Ray wasn't there, and that'd be tough starting your year off like that. Magnolia looked pretty good. I went out and spent a little bit of time with Mrs. McPherson. Of course, she didn't have students today, but we talked some CTE business,
and concerns about trying to find an English teacher, a math teacher, and really some issues with trying to find a steady master electrician. Then I went out to Hundreds today. That wasn't on my list, but I wanted to go out to see Hundred High School and was able to talk to some students and teachers and see some kids that I hadn't interacted with in several years. I could tell you I was really pleased with, they all had their masks on and they were wearing them the way they were supposed to. Was really glad to see those kids. On my way back to the office, I stopped off at my old stomping ground, Long Drain, and walked through the building, and I have to say the building really looks sharp. And it was really decorated really a lot better than it would have been if I was there, because, you know.
Not necessarily.
But you know, when Mrs. Wells was talking about the library and Mrs. Walker had made the castle that she would see from Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, it was really spectacular. I told her that was the best one that I had, you know, ever seen her come up with. And you know, I walked around the building and saw some kids. Had a couple of kids ask me what I was doing there. You know, I wasn't supposed to be there anymore. You know, and I had a little girl that she came up and gave me a hug. I know I'm social distance, but I didn't. You know, I didn't call her to do that. She just did that herself. You know, little Leona. And that just made my day and a half. And as I walked through the building in the afternoon, Mr. Sumner had the middle school kids out, and he was going over the handbook with them in the gymnasium. And what was really neat about that was my job in the past, so that's his job. I don't know if he'll like that job, but I just thought that was hilarious that he was out, you know, that he was doing that. You know, he's another one of those people that may not be an administrator, but we need in the building, because that's the true teacher leader. You know, I plan tomorrow to spend time at Payton City and Valley. Might stop and see Shortline as well, but that's what happened with me today.
Thank you, Mr. Houston. Speaking of Shortline, I know Mrs. Stanford spent most of her day, if not all of her day, at Shortline School Day, so. Yeah.
I was there about 7:15, so I was there when the buses started coming in at 7:30, and they had staff lined up in the gym when the kids come through, because some of them wouldn't remember who their teacher was, you know, that just happens in elementary. And then we will walk them back to class, and the best thing in the world. I mean, it was to see their smiling faces on the staff. The teachers were smiling. Well, you couldn't see them, but you could. In their eyes, you could see it. And the kids were just so happy to be there. I mean, it was truly amazing. And I think the first day, I mean, I was in a lot of the classes. They go over procedures and how to do things, and practice going to the cafeteria. You know, practice walking up and down the hallway, and you know, just all kinds of stuff. And I think it just, for the kids, it went very, very well. It really did. I did go up to Valley for a little bit, and high school is more quieter, you know, but the school looked it was outstanding. It was so clean. I walked around all, you know, kind of just peeked in the rooms and stuff, and they were all, again, going over procedures, a lot of procedural stuff, but the kids seemed to be all happy to be there, and they were all wearing their masks, and didn't seem to be an issue with any of that. I mean, so great start for the kids.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mrs. Stanford. Mr. Vargas.
Started my day at Payton City Elementary, Mr. Lancaster. It was good to see all the excitement from the little kids' faces as they were coming in, taking the pictures and that sort of thing with their teachers. Went to the high school next, and those guys didn't have the same level of giddy up in their step as the little guys from the elementary, but that's just part of the beast of the high school. But they were getting their lockers when we were there, and the building looked very clean, very nice. I had a couple other things to go over
Yes.
real quick, Mrs. Wells. Just two things, won't take very long. From the last board meeting, I was asked to follow up on a couple of things. Pass this out real quick. So Ms. Green spoke with you all last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, about the chronic absence rate for short line school. And if you remember, she talked about how they had a 78% attendance rate from the federal measure, and I explained later on how that is looking at the percentage of students who have a 90% rate or higher. Just so you see the overall picture, what you have there is the 10-year average and the 5-year average for all of our schools. So the 10-year average, we had a high of 95% from Payton City High School and Payton City Elementary to a low of 92% at Shortline. And that is when each kid counts the same. Okay, the weight is the same. So you're either there or you're not. And then the 5-year rate, we had a high of 94% from a handful of our schools and a low of 92% at Shortline and Valley. So as you can see, when we report the attendance rates that were required by the state, it's a very different measure from 92% to 78%. So I want you to be able to see that. The second thing I was asked to follow up on is, are we sending mixed signals with attendance? This year, I think you brought this up. Mixed signals with attendance during the pandemic, and also not sending your children to school when they're sick. You know, obviously something has to trump the other, and what we all agree is don't send your children to school when they're sick. I spoke with the State Department about that, and our concerns and frustrations with sending mixed signals and, you know, the attendance accountability measure with Shortline as a CSI school during this. And they completely understand our concerns and frustrations. What they're telling us, though, is their hands are tied by the feds, and there's no waiver from attendance accountability at this point in time unless the feds would give the states a waiver. So that's where we are with that as well. Thank you, Ms. Ball.
Board members, any questions about any of the reports? Thank you all for your time and sharing with us today.
I'd just like to say I'm really proud of my staff too. I mean, they've done a fantastic job, and they really made sure they are visible to the people in the county. I'm really proud of all of them.
Thank you. Any other questions, board members? We do have the date and time of the next meeting being September 13th. I will make just real quick, because now that I had time to kind of brought up the LSIC. Let's, I don't want to rush them, but yet let's prioritize Shortline because of the situation, because we're required to meet with them. And so let's prioritize them. Board members, I'd like to go out there if we can make that happen. I would like to go out there and at least have that one there. If we want to think outside the box for the others that we're not technically required to have, that's okay. But as far as let's go out there. And so if you could work on a date that works with them and us, I think at least, at minimum, we need to go to Shortline. And then if we want to try to work it where we're actually at the others, that's fine too with me. But in particular, I think it's important that we do that. And so if you work on that when you're looking at that LSIC and working on a calendar that's sent out to us, if we could think about it from that perspective, if that's reasonable to the board.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that's all I have then, as it relates to that. Board members, one more time. Then with the date and time of the next meeting being September 13th at 6 o'clock for a regular meeting, I move for adjournment.
I'll second that.
As we move properly second to adjourn, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Stay out of this one.